Consciousness is something appearing every day, and when we fall asleep, we will go out of the consciousness. And it is one of the three myths of the world. And Francis Crick is the leader from this regard. So if you have a DNA, you can answer what's the source of the life. And just like the question for the life, we can try to find out the material background of consciousness. So what kind of model you are going to use? If you simply use animal, it's a kind of a problem, because consciousness is something specific to human being. So we can go to the patient with some disorder of consciousness. So it's very important to define the levels of consciousness. This is our basic approach to get the question answered. So for the application of the assessment, it can be applied. It can be applied in the scientific research. If you want to do a research over consciousness, you need to know where is the line. You have to know where's the line. The MCS is a kind of a line. So firstly, you need to understand where's the line. And Professor Cui also mentioned another case who was a patient from Taiwan. You can see that that patient lied in the bed for 47 years, and she died. She died, after the death of the father and the mother. So you can see that it's very difficult to provide daughter for this patient. So back in the moment when the daughter was injured, and if they have a kind of assessment and they can have a correct prognosis, the whole family will not suffer too much for 47 years. Sometimes to give up is also a right decision. And also I want to show you this book, Intro the Gray Zone. This book has been translated into Chinese. Stephen also has a good book, a lot of cases from that book. So you can see that in this book, the story was that by the examination for 5 days, we realized that she is still alive and she enjoys the total consciousness. She can hear every talk and she knows every visitors. And she said that the scanning found me, and it's just like a magic. I don't want to killed by the people around me. So here you can see that we are on the crossroad, because some patients cannot be saved. Some of the patients can be saved. So we have to answer this question: hope or not? No hope. We have to get the question answered. So coming back to the situation in China, we have been doing this for 20 years. So this is the searching result from our search engine. There were a lot of stories that the family members accompanied the patient for 8 years or for 6 years, and in the end, they finally they awakened the patient. So is that a science or is that a kind of a myth? So we have to get the evidence. Those kind of vegetative patients were in a dilemma because they will not die if we give the supportive care, and they can't be treated well, they can't heal. So they are living in the gray zone of their life, and that's a huge burden for the family members from the mental point of view or from economy point of view. And actually, a lot of family members suffered depression. From the point of view of the society, the patient, we have a lot of patient now because we have the ventilators, we have the resuscitation technologies, so that the patient can survive from those kind of attacks in the life. So we have so many patients, numerous patients in vegetative status, and that's a big burden on the society. So how can we do a study on the consciousness? We can make full use of those patients with some disorder of consciousness. Then we can understand much better. And we know that Belgium and Holland, those countries are the leaders of euthanasia.
Steven 教授的头身上，他花了20年的时间来做这件事情，做安乐死之前的意识的评估，包括舒马赫、沙龙、荷兰国王的弟弟这些高端人士，无一不是他评估的对象。他说，
So, Professor Steven spent 20 years in evaluating the consciousness status of those patients who would like to have euthanasia. So it's a kind of a medical practice challenging the authority of the God. If you are going to determine the status of a consciousness of a patient, it's a kind of the God work. So if a human being is going to do that, it looks like a challenge to the authority of the Almighty God. However, it is very important. We have DBS, we have other things, but this kind of evaluation or assessment is so important. I totally understand the toughness of the work of Professor Steve. So I'm so pleased to introduce this to the Chinese colleagues. And you can see that 7 out of 10 for the top 10, among the top 10 scholars in the disorder of consciousness area, 7 are from Belgium. You can see that Professor Steven and Owen and the other speakers of this meeting, you can see that the top rank experts had a presentation in this meeting. So trust, and trust. I totally appreciate the trust by Steven. Steven mentioned my name, Hypo again and again. That's a huge pressure on me as well. So Professor Steven was the chairman of ASSC.
他的20年的实践，所以在 Science、Nature 和 Lancet 母刊上面发了21篇文章。
You can see that he has published 21 articles in Science, Nature, and Lancet, and those articles laid the foundation for the current technologies and the products. And you can see this is the award given by the King of Belgium. And when the King of Belgium visited China, he introduced this project into China in person. You can see that these are the students of Steven. So, I'm from the medical background. I'm not a clinical doctor anymore. I don't work in the clinic. However, I'm so pleased to introduce this project to you, because the work of Professor Steven has also 2 legs. One leg is basic research, another leg is the clinical practice. You can see that this is the classification of the so-called vegetative status. Actually, we can divide that into 3 levels: the unconsciousness, And the second is MCS, and the third is the locked-in syndrome. So we describe those patients just like knocking the coffin, just lie in the coffin and knock the coffin, because the patient looked like unconsciousness at all, but actually the patient had consciousness. And this is the recovery. If we can have a good classification, if we can have the right classification, the prognosis will be very clear. We will understand what's the probability of getting recovered from the disorder of consciousness. If you don't know what's the status, you can't give the family member a quantified answer. And there is a high rate of misdiagnosis. You can see that we have so many literatures talking about this. And now we use the behavior to evaluate. However, behavior is just the cover of a textbook. You can't evaluate the book simply from the cover. And behavior is impacted by the clinical factors. So behavior cannot tell you the true story. We can do a CRSR. It is also a cover. It's not the intrinsic content of consciousness. So that's why we have to use the radiology. You can see that MRI and the PET, these are very important instruments, and Professor Stephen did such a great job in introducing the radiology into consciousness evaluation. So without CRSR and PET MRI, the misdiagnosis rate will be up to 60 to 70%. So that means if we have 100 patients with a clinical diagnosis of a UWS, and 40 of them actually are MCS, and 60 of them are UWS. And out of the 60, 20 actually are MCS star. And also we will have 4 patients with a locked-in syndrome. And the 36 patients are the true UWS patients. In China, we have a lot of experts with a very good experience. And we may make a judgment based on our experience. That's good. But there must be a high rate of misdiagnosis anyway. So this is Belgian 1-week assessment. So we have a lot of different scoring systems in China. They are good. However, we want to have the up-to-date or the state-of-art technology. Stephen also named that to change the diagnosis. You can see that because the behavior is not stable, we have to do 5 assessments. If you do 5 assessments, the misdiagnosis rate will be lower to 5%. You can see these are the 3 tests we're going to do: fMRI, PET scan, and the EEG. So if we can link the behaviors to those kind of investigations, we can make a lot of conclusions, and then leading to the machine learning and the deep learning. And there are some very impressive cases. If you simply evaluate from the behavior, they are all UWS. However, if you do MRI, you will get a different result. So you can see that they look like, both of the patients look like a UWS, but they are different. They are different. And do we need to do DBS? Do we need to do any stimulation? Not at all, because the patient is almost waking. So that's why you don't need to do any stimulation. They will wake. So that's why we are going to do this. It's something, a kind of a benefit, a kind of salvage for the family members. And then we can have a closed loop assessment. there are a lot of challenges, but don't worry, we can go step by step. Just like the weather forecast, 100 years ago, could you imagine that you can forecast the weather? You couldn't imagine that 100 years ago, but we do that step by step, and now we understand the value of a weather forecast. Because we have so many patients in China, if we can have accurate data, that's good. However, if you don't have good data, that's rubbish in, rubbish out. But once you have accurate data, you will get those questions answered. This is some the evaluation by the experts.
障碍临床领域的入口是患者医疗方案处理的关键。苏主任啊，这个当然我
You can see that these are the comments of the experts like Professor Stephen. He said that the diagnosis of DOC is based on the diagnosis, is based on the study of consciousness. It is the cutting point for the clinical practice in the DOC area. And also, you can see there are some comments from the neurologist and from the rehabilitation therapist.
在于这些个机器人啊，所以它的学科性相对会弱一些。我的理解啊，这个大家可以讨论。那么另外，我们的好朋友陈周斌教授，陈周斌是
You can see that according to the idea of rehabilitation therapist, we need to understand the problem of DOC. Once you realize that there is an issue of a DOC, you can give the patient target therapy. And also, we have a lot of neurosurgeons here. I don't understand the neurosurgery because a lot of experts mentioned that the evaluation can work as a screening instrument to understand what's happened to the common patient after the neurosurgery. So 1 week diagnosis will become very important from this regard to have an evaluation of the patient. What has happened after the neurosurgery and in coma? How to do the prognosis? We can use the 1 week assessment. And also, if we can classify the patient, we can talk to the medical insurance. We can use the data to, lobby the medical insurance to give the patient proper financial support. Okay, for the interest of time, I skip those kind of details. And now we are doing some industry evaluation. You can see that the meeting today is EverFirst training. It is supported by Stephen. You can see Stephen asked so many experts to present the topic to us. It's highly valuable. And then we will have a CRS evaluation. Maybe we should do a kind of certification. We have to get accurate data. We have to qualify the person who apply assessment.
那么另外就是国外的培训，史蒂文教授
And also we have training, overseas training. Professor Stephen has prepared a curriculum of overseas training. Due to the pandemic of COVID-19, we have to postpone the overseas summer school, and the curriculum is already there. The facility is already there. We believe that once the COVID-19 is over, we will fly there immediately to start our training. And in the end, we will have certification. And also we will set up a kind of industrial standard. This standard must be formed by the clinicians, but we, as the researchers, would like to put bricks on that and helps with the development. And this is the report to our association. And in the end, I'd like to introduce our research institute. Actually, we started from the review. It started from the review in the Lancet. From 2004, we started the communication with Stephen. You can see this is the ambassador of Belgium, and they believe that this work is also very important. And I'd like to introduce the history. It's a kind of personal career path of me, so I will not go into the details, but have a short introduction. So in 2019, we received the grant, and from year 2003, 2004, and 2007, and 2015, Belgian King visited China, and we signed a lot of documents. So this is our work. You can see that we have a lot of good articles published. We have done this for about 20 years, and we have our evaluation and also our articles. These are pain and the communication, and these are the new therapies we have developed. Everything is associated with the clinical practice. And also there are some ethical issue research. And also we have the study into anxiety. And then why we are having the meeting here? Because we received a grant. It's a kind of consciousness association with the posterior cortex. So this is a grant by the state government, and then you can see that we have our incubator. It's a kind of it's a in the future we will not call ourselves an incubator. So that's why we are going to have the training. We can take the word of incubation out of the board of our institute. So I just mentioned Francis Crick. Can we find the DNA of consciousness? So what's the NCC? You can see that this is the element of heart in Chinese character, and in Europe, they also think that heart is the source of consciousness. They will scale the heart, the weight of the hair, to determine if the person is going to go to heaven or go to the hell. And then you can see this is the neuron. And you can see this is the work of Professor Stephen from anterior or from posterior cortex, or it's a kind of linking between the two. And now we tend to believe that consciousness comes from the posterior cortex, not from the anterior. You know, a lot of professors are doing the work and claiming that consciousness is from the posterior cortex. So this is the Nature review. You can see that the consciousness may come from here. So can we take the consciousness disorder, DOC, patient as the model to find NCC? Because we have a very good diagnosis system, we can do study into, you know, the patient from the point of view of a diagnosis, intervention, and the prognosis. And our idea is supported by the government, and then we received the grant. You can see that when we have a DOC patient, we will do a 1-week assessment and put them into MCS and VES. Very good. And then we put all the data into PET or into fMRI, and then we do a lot of a study. For example, the disorder of the internal environment. We can use a lot of wearable devices, and then we can do the upgrading and feed the data into machine learning and deep learning, so that we can approach the NCC. If an area is found to be associated with inhibition, we will do the control. We will do a TDCS. It is the best therapy with evidence. We can do the stimulation on that inhibition area. If it is posterior, then we stimulate the posterior. So from the point of view of diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis, we can approach where the consciousness, we can find what's the NCC. So if we can have accurate diagnosis, precise diagnosis of DOC, we can provide evidence for the treatment and prognosis, and also we will understand how to give a rehabilitation service to those patients.
他说：“现在中国有一个脑科学，我们联合起来，因为他是做临床类的啊，我们想做这个。很抱歉，李教授，我在这个会议上面把我们的以后的想法。”
You can see that in our university and institute, we will not only do the human study, but also we will do some studies based on the primates. Our partner experts said that they are going to work with us and to find out the consciousness for the primates animal. So not only the clinical practice, but also it's